if you look at the price of gold now, relative to that money supply, gold is as cheap as it ever has been in American modern history. The risk reward, I believe, is off the charts for people.
There is so much uncertainty in our world today. In fact, there is a real crisis going on in the financial sector. It's really crazy what's going on. People are being debanked, as we saw first with President Trump, then with some of the conservative activists. Just last week, we had a movement for freedom of religion be debanked, as well as Kanye West. So something is going on in the financial sector that's going crazy. Inflation has gone up like nuts, and people are really worried about their economic future. One of the things that, you've probably heard a lot about is investment in gold as a way to protect yourself against this, especially against inflation. But, we were considering that at LifeSite because of all the people being canceled and attacked that might be debanked. We're one of the targets. So we've been looking into this for a time, but it's always unsettling. And who do you go with? Who do you work with? Because these are all, financial institutions and people trading in metals. And really, where is your surety? Because we've always grounded ourselves in the faith, in being pro-life and so on. So we're working with a great community. As we were looking into it, I kid you not, someone called us who was actually working in the field, had advertised on LifeSite. And when we got talking to them, we struck up a partnership because we saw that they were so faith-filled, that they were already supporting LifeSite in terms of our very controversial stands for much of the world. And we're going to get into that, about gold and about who is this investment company or this gold company with whom you can take part and be sure you're on good ground. This is the John-Henry Westen Show. Stay tuned. Drew Mason, welcome to the program.
Praise be Jesus. Thank you for having me, John-Henry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's begin as we always do at the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. So, Drew, you run a company called St. Joseph's Partners. It does do just that. It trades in gold and silver and sells people gold. First of all, can you tell us how you got into this in the first place? I find this fascinating that you, a faithful Catholic, is doing this. Let us know how you got into this, sort of how and why.
Thank you, John-Henry. So I didn't grow up as a gold bull. I grew up loving stocks with my dad, watching all the financial programs. I went to school and majored in finance at a business school, and I worked on Wall Street for about 15 years. And what happened was the culmination of that period, I had been working for about 10 years at Lehman Brothers. And at Lehman Brothers back in 2007, the stock was trading at $150 a share. And the company really forced employees to take their compensation in company stocks. So we had at any time almost a third of our comp tied up. And if you left the company, you forfeited it. So you really had these handcuffs on. As 2008 progressed and people began becoming concerned about the debts and Lehman, I approached my supervisors and I said, it's kind of concerning looking at our balance sheet. There's so much debt. And they said to me, look, sissy, we've got the number one equity franchise on Wall Street. We've got the number one fixed income franchise on Wall Street. We've been around 100 years. What do you think is going to happen? Get back to your desk and work, sissy. I thought, what do I know? We knew there was going to be a problem, but we just hoped. We hoped that everything would be okay. And hope is not a strategy for protecting one's finances. So I was there at the epicenter of the financial crisis in 2008, working for Lehman Brothers, and it was incredibly painful. All that savings went to zero overnight, and there was nothing we could do about it. So Barclays bought Lehman. They gave me a job, but I thought, there's that old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I thought if I do this, if I repeat this process and I take all this pain for my family, I will be unconsolable. And so every situation I had read about in history where there was a society that had too much debt, it always had the same outcome. When there was too much debt, wealth transitions to gold. And I thought, I don't have to be the smartest bulb on the shelf. Those probabilities are almost unique. And so I quit my job and been working in precious metals now for over 12 years doing just this, John-Henry.
Here we are at a very similar point. And it's not only in the United States or in Canada or even only in the West. It's everywhere in the world has gone absolutely crazy with debt because of the whole COVID nonsense. The massive, massive use of funds. All the governments have pumped in cash that they didn't have. So they're all in hock in probably, I would venture to guess, the worst it's ever been. And so really now seems to be a time like none other to invest in gold.
I agree with you, John-Henry. The analogy for Lehman applies to today. All the world's major currencies are overly indebted. And again, when you look at history, whenever a country's debts have become unpayable, their currencies have compressed in value. And you talk about the record amount of money that is being printed, which is like monopoly money. There's nothing backing it. And if you look at the price of gold now, relative to that money supply, gold is as cheap as it ever has been in American modern history. The risk reward, I believe, is off the charts for people because this is unusual. This is unique in financial history. All the major countries are synchronously heading towards an inability to pay their debts. And I think we're starting to really see that today in a very real way, right? I mean, just this month, we're recording this October of 2022. We just saw Japan intervene in their FX markets for the first time in 25 years because things were coming unglued. We just saw Great Britain was on the verge of a major crisis. I mean, these aren't tiny little third world countries. These are major nations. And then just last week, Janet Yellen admitted she is concerned about liquidity in the American bond markets. I mean, this is the height of finance. And when liquidity problems begin to raise their heads, it should be saying to us that it's time to have a little more caution. And I want to be clear, John-Henry, I am not trying to sell Armageddon to anyone in any way. We've never had Armageddon before, and I'm not banking on it in the future. But what we suggest to clients is that you want to look at precedent and the probabilities. And the probabilities are that we're going to have a transition in our financial system here. When this has happened in the past, again, wealth has transitioned to gold, and people want to have some in their portfolios because it has been so positive in helping people avert massive pain. You look at 1929, the Great Depression, stocks fell 80% from peak to trough. Gold was up 70 by the end of the Depression. You go back and you look at the crash of 1987, of 2000, 2008. Consistently, you see gold has this inverse correlation to these other assets. And when they struggle, gold has shined. Now, people will say gold should be doing even better this year with inflation. Why isn't that happening? And I empathize with that perspective. But people have to realize, again, what we are seeing is totally unnatural. When you look at the basic rules of finance, and John-Henry, finance is simple. People who try to make it complex either don't understand it themselves or they're trying to keep someone as dependent, make them dependent upon them. It's very simple. When inflation or rates go higher, then that means the valuations for stocks, bonds, and real estate compress because all those assets are what they call, you can discount the cash flows. And the higher the rate of inflation, it means the less valuable those cash flows are. So the natural functioning markets would have had the bond market prices falling and the yields rising for years. But the Fed, the central banks, have injected $10 trillion of artificial demand into the markets. So that has driven bonds literally to levels we've never seen. It's absurd to think we just had negative interest rates. That shows you that all the pricing mechanisms are distorted. So as long as we have inflation today, say at 10%, and the bonds at 3%, you know the discovery mechanism is broken and the prices of all the major assets are really going to be a mirage. But the summary of that, John-Henry, is that when you see that kind of a setup for bonds or stocks, which again are at near all-time highs, even with the pullback we've seen, investors who own those are enjoying this abnormal government privilege that has elevated those assets there. And anyone who buys those today is paying a tax. Whereas this QE subsidy, this QE spending has created a subsidy for us to buy gold more cheaply because the government has artificially decreased demand with these signals that it's sending in the market. So we think the timing is outstanding to put this hedge in place. The price is very attractive where it is now, and the probabilities are very strong. People will be happy they did this.
Just a quick note before we return. If you would like to stay up to date on LifeSite's coverage of the latest life, family, and culture news, subscribe to one of our many newsletters by going to LifeSiteNews.com/subscribe. And if you'd like to help us bring our truth-telling coverage to millions around the world, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation at give.lifesitenews.com. And now, back to the video. Most of us don't have lots of expendable income. And so when we're going to make investments at all, it's got to be in something sure. And even if we're already convinced about gold, well, there's a ton of places online that you can buy gold, and the prices actually vary. I encourage people to go check it out. And that's why, when we looked at you after you contacted us, we thought, wow, well, let's see what they're about. We looked at your prices, and your prices compare very well to everybody else. In fact, they're better than most. So we thought, okay, that's good. But the other thing was that you're overtly a faithful Christian. You call yourselves St. Joseph's Partners. And not only that, you're willing to advertise on LifeSite, which is, I think, for a lot of people, a pretty controversial thing because we're, in the terms of the world anyway, who might be your potential customers, you'd be anti-abortion, therefore you're anti-women, or you'd be anti-LGBT, and therefore you're a hater and a bigot. And how dare you advertise with those? Lots of places have been canceled companies have been canceled for daring to stick out their necks for pro-life or pro-family. But you're standing on principle, you're showcasing, even if you will, your faith by having the name St. Joseph's Partners. Why would you do that? Wouldn't you think there's a business threat in there?
When I started the company, I just felt led to name it St. Joseph Partners. And at the time, we had Obama in office, and we were talking about the importance of getting God out of every element of society. And so to me, if someone who is so anti-God and who talks about the rules for radicals, which was a book dedicated to Lucifer that Obama knew, and they're saying it's so important to get God out of society, that to me means we have to do exactly the opposite. We have to try and bring God back into every element of society. So picking that name was our tiny way of doing that. And to your point, and this may sound crazy, but I think we have to be careful. Often Satan speaks to us through friends. They're very well intentioned, just like when Peter went to Jesus to try and talk him out of going to the crucifixion, right? So after I named it that, again, I had just come off of Lehman Brothers, right? So I'm bleeding from all orifices, right? Like it's been brutal. If you look closely, you can still see the Lehman scar. It says Lehman across my forehead, right? So I was bleeding. And a dear friend who was extremely successful with an owner of a multi-billion-dollar fund called me and said, "What is your problem, you idiot? What are you doing naming your company like this, stepping out like that? What are you trying to do? Just run your family over?" So hung up from that. And I was really in tears at that point, John-Henry. I'm like, what am I doing? Lord, I'm trying to do what I think you want me to do. But he's right. I have to protect my family. So I said, Lord, I just really need you to confirm that as someone trying to provide for my family, this is what you want me to do. I'm hearing you right. So it was one of the few times I opened my Bible and my eyes fell to the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they went into the fire for the Lord and he protected them. I said, okay, Lord, I believe you. Thank you. And I would say that is what the Lord does. If you step out in faith and you trust him, like when Peter stepped out of the boat, even when he started to doubt, it says as soon as he called out to Jesus, he rescued him. So if we step out in faith, I believe the Lord will more than protect us. There's a quote, John-Henry, if I could just share here for a second. Medjugorje was an event for me in 1984. So I've been doing firsthand due diligence on this for almost 40 years. And it was extraordinary. And there was a quote from Medjugorje where the Mother of God apparently said in her presence there, and I think we can prove, John-Henry, her presence. She said, if you proclaim the gospel courageously, the truth will miraculously win. That's a quote, will miraculously win. And I want to say to everyone, have courage. Satan tries to scare you. Step out. The easiest way to proclaim the gospel is just say, praised be Jesus. And that's it. 3 words, and you alter everything around you. Evil has to begin to flee. And so that's been our experience. We've met so many wonderful people, John-Henry, I think as a result.
For us, it was a great consolation because as we were looking around trying to figure out who can we work with on this, we don't know the lay of the land. We know we need to do this financially speaking, but who do you sort of work with on something like this? Having you call, seeing your name and your fidelity on life and family issues, which are the hardest ones today, that was truly a mark of the Lord for us as well. Drew, I wanted to tell everyone too about something that we're going to be doing. We're going to be offering before Christmas, so you can get it for Christmas, a LifeSite round, a 1-ounce silver round. It's from LifeSiteNews. It's going to be like a collector's edition. And it's going to be in commemoration also of the demise of Roe v. Wade, which of course happened this year with the Dobbs decision. We want to make that available to you. So please look for that in the near future. And Drew, I wanted to give last word over to you. Please, everyone, you're going to be seeing advertisements for St. Joseph Partners and being able to fulfill your gold orders, as well as soon the LifeSite round in 1-ounce silver. Drew, last word over to you.
No one can guarantee you anything financially with any value. And we can't guarantee anything about gold. But what I can tell you is, again, the probabilities, according to history, are so high that you want some of your wealth here because it will help protect your other assets, your portfolio, should indeed stresses continue, as it looks like they're going to with debts as they are. So we'd be honored to serve you. We have one of the best IRA departments in the world, helping people who may not know you can take a portion of your retirement wealth and protect it without any taxable event, and at the same time have it in real gold and real silver. And we'd also be honored if you join us. Our specific charitable focus is we're trying to build an army who will fast with us twice a week for the restoration of our nation and for the protection of those who risk their lives for us. We think you'll find it incredible in terms of the blessings it brings of protection for you and your families. And we look forward to the pleasure of speaking with many of you in the future.
Awesome, Drew. Thanks so much. God bless you, and may God bless our partnership together. And God bless all of you, and we'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. This is John-Henry Westen. We hope you enjoyed this video. And to see more like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button below to get all the latest content from LifeSite News. So check out our links in the description to read more, sign up for our newsletter, and connect with us on social media so that you can stay up to date with all of the latest life, family, and culture news. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.